Hey, Mike Rain here with Canadian Musician in downtown Toronto, and very pleased to have with me Deryck Whibley. Of course, probably needs no introduction. Main man of longtime Canadian pop-punk mainstays, Sum 41. And Deryck, man, how you feeling? How you doing?
I feel good. It's really good to be back in downtown Toronto. I've been here in a while.
You're I have to say, this may be a kind of like almost a meta question, but just in the like half an hour I've been here, I think I'm like the third person interviewing you, and which is a good sign, obviously, that people want to meet with you or interested in what you're doing in that. But for other musicians who maybe haven't experienced this kind of press day like you're having today, how do you deal with it? Like, how do you even bother having anything to say by the end of it?
Well, to be honest, I mean, there's much worse things you could be doing than sitting around just talking about yourself all day. So it's not that bad.
And so your guys' new record, 13 Voices, comes out, I think it's a week today, would make it October 7th. And you're first on Hopeless Records. But, of course, there's a lot of backstory and just history that's happened between the last record and this one. You've had some obviously well-publicized health issues, and you've battled alcoholism, in which you've been very open about and vocal about and sharing your story. Before we kind of dig into the creation of the record and everything that went into it, just does it feel like a relief to just be getting it out there, or to just be done with it in a way?
It does. I mean, it was really a difficult record to make, mostly because of going through the process of recovery and coming out of the hospital and everything that I had to deal with all of that, and at the same time trying to write songs and make a record. But at the same time, it was the best thing for me to have to do while I was recovering. Mm-hmm. You know, even though it was really difficult, it was the thing that kept me, you know, pushing forward and just staying on the course of getting better, because there was so many times because it was so difficult. Because, I mean, I had nerve damage in my feet, I had muscle atrophy in my legs, and the pain was so brutal that I couldn't stand on my feet for more than 10 minutes. I couldn't walk, I couldn't support my own weight, and that lasted for about a year to a year and a half. And that was like every second of every day. It just felt like it was never getting better, and I was in so much physical therapy and so much physical pain at the same time, and going through that, trying to get better, and then trying to write music at the same time. But like I said, that helped me just stay on that course, because through all that, there was many times I was just going to fall off. You know, there was so many tipping points where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I'd rather just live out my life drinking, because at least that's fun.
Were you writing during that period because you wanted to use it as a form of relief or therapy, or did you feel some pressure, maybe even just from yourself or from outside, that you needed to put out a record?
What it wasn't necessarily that something was pushing me to do anything. It was more like I was being pulled to do it. It's just something that I had to do, whether I wanted to or not. Really, it just felt like something internal was just pushing me forward, you know. And I just knew I had to get out there and play music. It's the only thing I could think of that I wanted to do every second of every day, every time I was working so hard to recover and to get better with my legs. And I just kept thinking about being on stage, you know, just that's the one thing that just pulled me through it all.
Like, I've spoken to a lot of artists over the years who have had their own battles with addictions of various kinds, and some prefer to not talk about it and, you know, keep it private, and you could certainly understand and respect why they'd want to do that. And others, people like Tom Wilson or Mad Child and people like that who I've spoken to, are very open about talking about it and want to share their story, and in hopes maybe of that somebody else out there will get something out of it, or maybe just because people have questions and they're just are fine to talk about it. But for you, in this last year or so, you've been very open about talking and sharing your experiences. Why is that?
There's a few reasons. Number one, I felt that because it had happened to me and how easily it happened to me, and sort of, even though I knew I drank a lot, so did everybody else that I knew. You know, it wasn't just me. I wasn't on a solo mission. Everybody around me was drinking the same or more and doing worse things than I was doing. So it was somewhat unexpected that this happened to me. And I felt that if this could happen to me at this age, sort of unexpected, you know, also unexpected of just how quickly I became addicted to it. Because I always party, but sort of like the normal person would party, where you have it under control, where it's like these are party times and this is work time, where it quickly changed after, about 15 years of drinking that way. The last year and a half to 2 years became the dependency kind of drinking, and how that shift was so quick and unexpected. I felt that could easily be happening to a lot of people. So I thought, I want to come out with it and just say, hey, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but this is what happened to me. And then there's the fact that every time I write music for a record, it's always sort of a snapshot of who I am at that moment in time. So I knew I was going to be writing all this music about what I've been going through, and I'm going to have to talk about it no matter what.
Were you ever trying to use it as a creative tool or creative crutch, or was it something that was always separate from your creative self?
I think the way I write, and the only way that I know how to write, and this goes back to even the very first, back to Fat Lip and All Killer No Filler, is that it's always about my life at that time. That's just sort of the way I write. It's just my natural way of writing, is I just write about my life and my surroundings and everything that I sort of am witnessing. So it's just, I don't know, it's just the way I write, really. I don't really think about it too much.
To get into the creation of this new record, 13 Voices, well, first off, it's the first record with you guys as a 5-piece, with both Tom and my God, I just drew a complete blank. There you go. My apologies, but with both Tom and Dave in the band, how did that change the dynamic? Both like the creative dynamic in the studio, and how has it also changed the dynamic on stage?
Well, it doesn't really change much in the studio. Where it changed a lot was what we do on stage. When we all sit there and play together, all these, especially with the old songs and the new songs, and just working out who's going to do what. That took a little second to figure that all out. But once we did, the band just sounded completely different. We sound different than we've ever sounded. And to me, it's more exciting. It's better. It's bigger sounding. We can just do so much more, especially with vocals now. Like, both of them are great singers. So we're able to cover all the harmonies and all the different guitar parts between us all. And also Tom plays keyboards as well, so he's able to he's two musicians in one.
When you're bringing your songs to the band, how much of it is essentially this is a Deryck Whibley song and you guys are going to fill in these roles, and how much is it you bring it in and it becomes a Sum 41 thing, and essentially how much creative control do you have over the end product of a song that you've written?
I would probably say I try to complete songs as much as possible before I show it to anybody. And that includes like everybody. There's nobody's ears, hears anything until I feel like I've done as much as I can do to it. And then once I've taken it that far, then I start showing the rest of the band, and we'll start playing it, learning it. And I leave spots though, I'll leave like, hey Dave, I would love you to play some kind of crazy guitar solo over this. And if you have any other ideas, I'm open to it. I never say, I'm not open to anything. This is it. Here, just learn it. I'll say, this is as far as I can go. If we like it, it stays the same. If anyone has any other ideas, then I'm open to it, And sometimes we will change something. We did that on this record with a song called Fake My Own Death. The riff was one way I wrote it. It was fine, but it wasn't that great. We started talking about it, thought it could be better. We all sat around kind of working on it for about 5 minutes, and all of a sudden it was a new riff. And then there you go. It was so much better. So, and then there's a song called Goddamn I'm Dead Again, and it has a really long guitar solo. And I left that section I wrote that song. It was probably the second song I wrote for the record. I had it for about a year. And I left that for Dave for about a year for him to finally hear it and then go and come up with that solo on it.
This is, like I mentioned off the top, this is your guys' first record being released by Hopeless Records. But at the time you guys were recording, you were unsigned and you went the pledge music route as far as crowdfunding for the record and that kind of thing. But before we get into the crowdfunding bit, I'm just wondering, writing and recording a record as an unsigned artist, did that change anything for you compared to when you were on Island and you were part of that, which is a division of Universal and that, but being an unsigned artist during the creative process, at least, that change anything?
It did and it didn't. We were on Island for a long time, And so there was a lot of people that came and went through that. I don't know how many years it was since '99 to I don't know when we left, like 2013. I think we left. There's a lot of different people. We had a lot of different A&R guys, and for the first, say, 4 albums with Island, we were just left alone to do whatever we wanted to do. As time went on, especially by the last record, Scream Bloody Murder, I would say Underclass Hero, Scream Bloody Murder, those 2 records in a row, we started to feel the record company trying to weigh in on what we should sound like. They were very unsuccessful. We never did came close to. They wanted us to be a pop group and work with pop producers, and that's when I just said, no, I'm going to produce myself, and we're a guitar rock band, and that's just the way it is. So we started, kind of butting heads with them at that point. And then by the time Scream Bloody Murder record, that cycle was over, we just went our separate ways. We both agreed that it's not the right place for us. So when we went to Hopeless, it just felt like what it was like on Island in the early days. It changed the fact that I didn't get any phone calls from people saying I should work with so-and-so who did, the last Britney Spears record.
Like I mentioned, you guys did crowdfunding for this record through Pledge Music. And I'm just wondering essentially, what was the experience there as far as, would you do it again? Would you recommend it to other bands? Like I remember speaking to the Trues, and they did a similar thing for their last record. They enjoyed it; it was a success, but they told me it was a lot more work than they're anticipating. So, what was your guys' experience with that?
There is definitely a work element involved in it, but it's not that bad, to be honest. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're with Hopeless right now, so I don't know how the next record would go with that kind of thing. I have no idea. But there is more work than you probably think there's going to be, because you sell off all these items of, say, like signed this, or not necessarily signed, but the handwritten lyrics or whatever you decide to do, which we decided to do a lot of handwritten lyrics. Writing out full songs like over and over and over again can take a while.
For something like that to be successful, you need to have a fan base there that's engaged enough to want to help fund your record and cares that you're doing something, you're in the studio, and they want to feel part of it. And which obviously you guys have built up. It's been, I'm trying to remember, since All Killer No Filler came out, it's been, 15 years now? Yeah. So it's been 15 years, a decade and a half. You guys came together in 1996, so it's almost 20, well, it is 20 years since you guys first formed. You guys are veterans, especially you are veterans of this industry at this point. But having had a debut album that really broke out and was a hit right away, it's a blessing, obviously. I'm sure every band would love to have that happen. But I've also, again, was speaking to bands and that who have had similar experiences. They're like, it can be difficult once the easy attention goes away, when you're the new thing and everyone wants to talk to you, you think it's going to keep lasting, and they're like, oh shit, maybe it's a lot more work to keep this and keep the momentum going. Like, looking back at that, what lessons have you guys learned, or you learned, about maintaining a fan base?
I would say one of the lessons I learned that helped me early on was words of wisdom from Ice-T. And he said, the only thing harder than be in the Mac is stay in the Mac. So I was, it's always felt like every record is always like you're a new band. Yeah. It always feels like you got something to prove, and it sort of feels like most people are saying, have the attitude of like, well, why? Show me why I should care. Yeah. That's at least the way we always go into it, is feeling like we got something to prove.
Feeling like you have something to prove, though, like, is that something to prove to other people, or something to prove to yourself, or essentially to your record label? Like, what is that?
It's probably just to everyone, to ourselves, to, it's just to everyone, to fans, that we're still going to put out the best that we can do. Like, we still care as much as we always did. And just to anyone who thinks that we're over. I've been hearing that we've been over since after All Killer No Filler. First, that when you come up with a successful first record, they say, well, probably going to be a one-hit wonder. And you have a successful second record, and they say, well, that's probably going to be it. Then you have a successful third, and then there's always a reason why you're probably over now.
In an interview from not too long ago, I think it was only a few months ago, but I'd seen a previous interview you'd done where you're talking about, you mentioned you purposely don't listen to the radio and you purposely don't listen to new music.
It's more of like, I don't listen to radio, and I don't listen to radio because I don't really like what's on it most of the time. But I don't pay attention. Yeah, I mean, I don't really like to have anything sort of modern that's really sort of influencing me in any kind of way, because it goes into your subconscious. And it'll start to creep out in your own creativity without you even, meaning it to. So I stay away from it, and if I listen to the radio, it's classic rock.
And near the end here, but just to stay on that, like, if you're listening to classic rock and I see the Elvis Costello button and that, which is like, are you still seeking out stuff that's not necessarily new and modern, but at least new to you? Like, if you're not putting new input into what you're listening to, is there any chance that your own music becomes stale because you're not taking in new influences or new inspirations, or is that even a concern at all?
It's not really a concern because I don't really necessarily get most of my inspiration from listening to other music. My inspiration comes from other things, mostly life, and it really comes from a feeling. Like, I'm not really one a lot of people talk about writing when they're upset or depressed, and that's when they do their best writing. I don't. I have to be really happy and going through a pretty good time. I can write about those feelings after they're gone, but I just try to enjoy life. That really is the thing that inspires me most. If I feel really good and I'm really enjoying life, I want to pick up a guitar and I want to write.
And just lastly here, we've talked about the creation of the record and the influence and the difficult life experience that's inspired a lot of the songs. But because they may have heard the 3 songs that have come out so far, but obviously haven't heard the whole album. So just for those Sum 41 fans that are anticipating the record, just briefly here, like, essentially what can they expect? Like, how does it compare to previous work outside of, I guess, the lyrical content?
That's always the hardest question for me. I don't know how it compares. All I can say is that, to me, I did the best that I could do in a really, difficult and tough period in my life. And I think that comes out in the music. I think it is an aggressive rock record. I think it's energetic, it's exciting, but there's some meaningful stuff there.
Deryck, I know it's probably been a long day for you, like we said off the top, doing a lot of interviews, but I'm really glad to see you back, sounding good, looking good, man, and thanks a lot for doing this.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.